Okay, so it's about 7 in the morning on November 10th. It is about 34 degrees out right now, yet it is still hot enough for us to be running fans. You might be wondering how I got here. It all started a few weeks ago. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, except it wasn't and they weren't because it was raining and in the low 40s. And thanks to Rutgers' fantastic climate control, the rooms were even colder. I can't speak for everyone, but I can say with certainty that the entirety of Rutgers Campbell Hall's first floor was collectively freezing their asses off, begging for heat. At first, our RA said that the heat would be on by October 3rd, so we waited. October 3rd came and still no heat. Now with the excuse that the temperature needed to reach a certain threshold. Whatever that means when it's 40 degrees outside, I do not know. Some more days went by, and thankfully the weather outside began warming back up, and everything was fine. But it wasn't. One night, I accidentally bumped into my room's heater, and, it's warm? That's odd. Surely they didn't intentionally lie to us about the date it would turn on and then make us wait until after the weather warmed up, right? And you would be right. In that Rutgers did not stop there. According to this Reddit user who had allegedly been in communication with Rutgers maintenance, they explained that the people in control of the heating, in a strange fit of spite, intentionally made it warmer than it needed to be because we asked them to turn it on too early, whatever that means. Weeks went by and the warmer weather not only stayed but continued to get warmer, and with Rutgers dorms and restrictions against air conditioning, the rooms went from cryogenic to incendiary overnight. That brings us to where we are now, and if you're like me, sweating your ass off in the middle of November at 2 in the morning with several fans pointing directly at you, you might begin to question where that $8,000 to $10,000 you spend per semester on housing is going. The RU screw is real, and it very often rears its ugly head in housing. So what has your general experience dorming at Rutgers been like?
If I had to pick a word, I'd probably say inconsistent.
Hot. Mediocre.
Chaotic. Spacious.
Okay, so you're not even a Rutgers student. Your experience with the dorms has been limited to like a couple days here and there, like every few months. How would you sum up that experience?
We must up the place, turn up the bass and make them all have fun. How we ablaze the fire, make it fun them.
You know, it's not terrible.
It was too hot when we had no air conditioning.
I don't live here technically, but like I've been here for the 2 days or like maybe a weekend or two every once a month. Is like a pain in the ass because it's so hot in here. It's so hot in here.
Yeah.
You know, there's been some nice moments, but a lot of it has been very inconvenient.
And then temperatures became normal for about a week, and then the heating came on, and it was too hot all the time, and we cannot control it.
Heat, because they decided to turn it on like when it first started getting cold, and then when it was like hot as balls, they couldn't turn it off because it's like a whole like universal thing, I guess.
A bunch of the buildings are like connected to the same system, so like if you want to turn heat on for like one building, it'd be turned on for all the others.
I don't know if I can see my hands right now.
You can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's as I'm also like sweating in here. Also like, I don't know if I can.
Yeah, I still have my fan on in my room. It's November.
Heat concerns aren't only a comfort issue either. Many people suffer from heat-sensitive medical conditions, and taking into consideration the accounts of students passing out from heat stroke at the start of the 2021 fall semester,
The fuck is heat syncope?
this seems like something that maybe should be addressed at some point. Of course, heat isn't the only issue that dorming students face.
You know, issues with like maintenance and stuff.
When it was like winter time, and for like 3 days we didn't have hot water, and it was super cold, and we were very frustrated then. And then I'm kind of sensitive to like temperatures. Like I get kind of cold easily, so we didn't really have heat, especially at night certain days. So I'd get really, really cold at night.
The fans, mine, the light bulbs are slightly loose in their sockets, so sometimes they like rattle into the edge of the
With the
plastic.
fans?
Yeah, the ceiling fans.
Do you what?
They have ceiling
We have ceiling fans. Is that considered a luxury? But the floor fans, light bulbs knock around, they like in the middle of the night. And I also went into someone's room one time and the fan was just like shaking. Like as it rotated, it was just continuously shaking. And we asked like, hey, is your fan okay? And they were like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, ugly ass lights.
Oh yeah, okay.
Ugly ass lights.
Can I do this? What is this shit? Fun fact, that is like the exact same color as like a nuclear reactor turning on.
This technically isn't a dorming issue, but also it sort of is. The fact that we need to pay for laundry with either quarters, with there is no quarter machine downstairs, so I need to go to 16 Handles and beg them for quarters, or I need to download an app and use RU Express somehow, which I don't want to download an app to do my laundry.
At least in cold year, there was like always some sort of issue with the bathroom. So at least on our floor, so there would usually be like 2 or 3 working bathrooms out of like the 4 we had. And I also saw your message in the group meme about the showers.
It's easy to like ask generally like, oh, you know, what are the dorms like or something like that. Like, how do you mention things like the shower water being cold unless you turn on another shower, and then you get the fluctuation between cold and warm, but not super hot? Like, how do you explain that?
I haven't experienced that.
That is this year. But like, how do you explain something to that to someone coming in? How are they even supposed to ask a question that warrants that response? Like, it's such weird things that there's no way to know about it until you experience it.
It's like modern purgatory.
Also, I feel like just the general quality of the rooms doesn't feel like it's quite up to par with what you'd expect, given that, like, you know, what you're paying for tuition.
And he would be right. Granted, it's a much smaller school, but Ramapo, the school I'm most familiar with aside from Rutgers, starts its housing costs at $3,000 below Rutgers for singles and doubles, and has suites that look like this and not this. Again, Ramapo is a much smaller school, but I also don't think it's unreasonable for the state-funded juggernaut that is Rutgers to afford some kind of renovation. And you might say that other Rutgers suites look better than this one. To me, that's part of the problem, that on the same campus, some living spaces look like this, and others look like this.
I've seen some of the apartments though, and they're so much nicer. The fact that there's such a disparity in between like the absolute worst living conditions to like wonderful living apartments or whatever, then it's ridiculous.
Overall, I think my dorming experience at Rutgers exceeded my expectations.
Exceeded expectations? Well, as it turns out, right here on College Avenue, surrounded by the worst Rutgers has to offer, stands the Honors College, the place where the smart kids get to live. During COVID times, though, the building was used to house any students living on campus, giving many the chance to have the dorming experience that most can't even dream of.
The dorm itself was quite nice because like it has actual walls. It's not like the cement that regular dorms have.
The rooms are definitely bigger. You can tell. I mean, as I said just before, I walked into your dorm and I was like, oh wow, this is pretty small, but that's because I'm used to the Honors College dorms.
There's a bathroom pretty much every like 3 or 4 like rooms, like full showers and everything.
My question about the Honors College was, are the rooms, like, is it per room, like, climate control?
Yes, you can control it.
It's really nice. They had a like a thermostat in there, so you could change the temperature.
You had per room temperature control.
Yeah, which I mean, I think that's crazy. I don't usually think of dorms having that.
They don't.
So yeah.
The dorm building itself is like really, really nice. Like
the way that it was built, because it's a relatively modern building, you know, it had like open windows, and so I guess it was a nice atmosphere and a nice view.
It's like the wings, right? Because it's 3 things, and in between them there's like chairs to sit. Some places at a pool table. That's where like the maker space is, if you're familiar with that. All the lounges are really nice. They had this really bougie one of those like $2,000 espresso machines.
There's, I think one of the lounges on the first floor is open to the public generally, I guess. Like I think you can get into it if you don't have an ID card.
How would you feel if I told you that the Honors College has much better living conditions with temperature control per room, as far as I know?
I'm gonna go over there and, I don't know, beat up the administration with a bat.
Well, it just feels very like we care about certain people and we don't care about other people. You know, especially like the disparity between, say, Bush and like Cook Duck and stuff like that, even to say on College Ave with like the apartments and the Sojourner Truth apartments, which are very, very nice because they're very expensive and stuff like that. So it's like they're not treating all of their students equally based off of pricing and stuff like that. And even like academia-wise, where the Honors College is really nice for their special little children, but they don't put that with all of their students, which is not necessarily something that's fair and not really showing like I care for students' quality of life, and it comes down to mental health too.
It's interesting how even the positive dorming experiences add to the negative perception of the dorms as a whole. The idea that some students will be treated better than others for factors they have varying degrees of control over is disappointing to say the least. Despite the many issues dorming comes with and the attitude people have towards it though, there was one perspective that looked at the situation from a different angle.
I can't say for sure about other colleges, but I think what Rutgers has to offer in terms of like all the events that they have going on, I think it helps add to the dorm experience too. Because I think in places like Collier, people are really talkative, they're really social. So I think if you're in a place like that and you're willing to like step out of your shell, then dorming, and then plus the added experience of dorming at Rutgers makes it really enjoyable. But if you're not using the resources that Rutgers gives, like all the activities that they have, all the events that they're having, then dorming can be really depressing, especially with the amount it costs to dorm here. It's just like insane.
Yeah.
Like I was at a high, like dorming, everything's fun, but then you think about the cost and you think about what you're doing. If you're not really going out every day, if you're like studying mainly in your dorm, then it's kind of like hard to justify unless you're really involved and you feel like you have a place on campus that wouldn't be there if you didn't dorm.
The community Rutgers offers, especially if you take advantage of it, is definitely a major selling point for many people. At the time of recording, nearly 70,000 students are enrolled at Rutgers. Jesus Christ.
50,000 people used to live here. Now it's a ghost town.
It's safe to say that there's a person somewhere here for everything. It's just a matter of finding them. And the fact that throughout your entire time here you can keep meeting new people that you've never seen before is appealing. However, at the same time, the massive community Rutgers offers doesn't clean mold out of the air vents.
Is this how you get your sick kicks? What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
And that leads us here. My hair's a mess. So I'm in a weird spot because I really do want to give the dorms the benefit of the doubt because the community is great and I think that does make up for part of it. But at the same time, every time I try to give it the benefit of the doubt, something happens. Like maybe the shower will be inexplicably hot for some reason before being freezing cold again the next day, or another elevator will go out, and it's just every time I get to the point where I think, you know what, maybe I can excuse some of this stuff, something happens. Okay, it is now December, and I'm still sweating in my room. And as great as the community at Rutgers is, because it's huge, it's really just good, there's a lot of places for people to fit in, I don't think that the dorm quality should coast off of that, so to speak. Because not every student at Rutgers realistically is going to be an extrovert going out all the time. There's a lot of people who are introverts, and I feel like that they shouldn't suffer because they're not a part of the group that Rutgers isn't necessarily pandering to, but is relying on to get away with not renovating these buildings and fixing some of these issues. The quality of the dorms is a separate entity that should be taken into consideration on its own. Because the quality does matter, and it does come down to issues of mental health, because like this semester was difficult for me. And all the little dorm issues just kind of added on top of that, because you have already a rough day, you're already struggling with something, and then you can't take a shower because it's freezing cold, or it's scalding hot for no reason, or, you know, an elevator's down, you gotta walk, or stuff like that. It's just whatever little mechanical faults that happen that just kind of add to what you're already dealing with. And I don't think that's necessarily fair for people. And I guess where does that leave me with here? The point of this documentary, I guess, is because the chance of this actually inspiring any change in the part of Rutgers is unlikely, to say the absolute least. So I guess this is more of just a catalog of sorts of issues that people have dealt with in a way to show others that, okay, so I'm not alone. These weird issues are happening. And I guess that is part of what I wanted to do here, is just catalog it and make sure that it is known that these things are happening. And I guess the other part is just, you know, maybe just give incoming students a bit of a warning. Like, again, on the chance anyone actually sees this, but just a warning that, hey, you know, just know what you're getting into. Know that this place will have a lot of weird mechanical issues. You're going to have to deal with the RU screw. Just be aware of that before you get here. But also, I think another important thing to keep in mind is that when reasonably possible, don't always focus on the negative. It's very easy to. It's very easy to get caught up in all the things going wrong. And in some cases, it's absolutely valid. Like obviously this whole documentary is a tangible testament to me focusing on the negative of the dorms. But there are times where you just don't have to. It's not something you need to constantly keep festering about. Push the people that can make changes to make those changes. Don't like be a pushover, but also like Escher said, there is a community at Rutgers. There's a huge community at Rutgers. And it's full of people, you'll have never met before, and you could go out pretty much every day and meet new people you've never seen before. And that is absolutely something that you should take advantage of. There are plenty of things at Rutgers going on aside from the dorms. Obviously, it's a huge school. There's a lot going on, and there is a lot of things for you to do. And even if you are someone who's an introvert, you can still find plenty of fun that way. There's plenty of just things to do, really, like by yourself, with people. There's a lot to do. And I think it is important to keep that stuff in mind and take advantage of those things as well, and not entirely focus on the negative of the dorming experience all the time, because it can get tiring, and that will over time wear away at your own just happiness and ability to live peacefully. Having said that though, they should still fix the dorms.
I am used to New York City public transit, and I have had worse bus experiences on Rutgers than New York public transit, which is saying something.